Welcome to the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. In this podcast, you will hear a discussion with director Philippe Falardeau and actor Liev Schreiber from the film Chuck, moderated by Deadline Hollywood's Pete Hammond, recorded at the Landmark in West Los Angeles.
Congratulations, guys, because this movie has been a long time coming. I know for you, you've been involved with this for several years to bring this to the screen. And I'm wondering, it's such an incredible story. Here he was in the movies inspiring a fictional character, and now there's a movie about the real guy, which is, how many people have had that happen? Can you talk about what interested you in playing him? So much.
The truth is, I wasn't really. I mean, it was something that Mike Tolan brought to me 10 years ago, and I thought it's an amazing story that I hadn't heard, and I'm a boxing fan. But it wasn't really until Philippe came on that I sort of felt like, okay, there's something about this that's interesting.
You just made that up.
Just now, I just made that up. No, it was, for me, I think after having a couple of kids and being on television for a few years, I became interested in the kind of cautionary tale about fame and celebrity that I think is at the heart of the story.
That really is one of the interesting themes of this that I didn't expect. You think, oh, this is going to be a boxing movie. It's not a boxing movie. It's a movie really about a boxer and what happens to him and how he gets sucked into this whole world of celebritydom and fame and having to live up to that. Philippe, is that one of the things that interested you? What was it about the themes of this movie that made you want to sign on? And by the way, Philippe was nominated for an Oscar 2011 for Best Foreign Language Film, Monsieur Lazare, and The Good Lie also.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Reading the script, it was a very entertaining read. I didn't know Chuck Wepner, and all the twists and turns. I kept saying, "Wow, that can be true. That can be true." And there was the Rocky thing, of course, also. But beyond all that, I was fascinated by this idea that this man would chase an image of himself that was fabricated in Hollywood, and so in that sense, Liev's interest for the theme was pretty much the same as mine. Now, I kept making a list of the reason why we shouldn't like this guy, and it was a long list, but still, on paper and in life, you keep feeling for him, and you keep forgiving him, and I wanted to know why. And there's something about some people, their charisma, or maybe in his case, is innocence that also fascinated me. And we did try to work on the script and work also staging the movie in a way that we would make it meaningful beyond the fact that it was an entertaining story.
And Liev, you share a writing credit on this as well. So what did you bring specifically to the script from your point of view here that you felt needed to be in it?
Well, when we got the green light and got the financing, we didn't have a writer. And Philippe had just come on board, and I thought, well, I'm in the makeup chair 3 hours a day. Why don't I help out with the writing? And I think it was just we were trying to take a story that was about. We were trying to expand on the character in search of himself idea. And I think that's what both Philippe and I were interested in. And I was, taking my cues from him and a couple of other people who were working with us on the script. And we should say Michael Christopher really did a lion's share of this draft and the majority of the work.
Injected some very good dialogues.
That fantastic scene that Elizabeth Moss in the diner is all Michael Christopher. And if you know Michael Christopher, it's like you see, okay, that's.
But there was a danger that it would be like episodes in Chuck's life, because we had to compress a lot of things and change a bit the order of what happened to make a cohesive arc. And I think what Liev did is connect the dots to make sure that we were dealing with one arc and not just conjunctions of episodes in his life. And I see your work in the script when I look back at the original one that I read, that you really connected the dots.
And you're a boxer yourself. I mean, you can't do this and fake this on screen that well unless you've boxed a few times.
He's not faking it on screen.
This is like real stuff. I mean, you can tell the camera angles and everything else that you did, which is, I'm sure, something you wanted to do in this picture.
I really typically don't like boxing on film, mostly because there's no contact, and part of what we intuitively are drawn to, for better or for worse, with fighting, is people punching each other in the face. And so when I talked to Philippe, and part of what I like so much about Philippe is that he admitted his lack of experience with boxing. He's like, I don't know much about it. And he went away and kind of watched boxing, and he was like, well, for the most part, nothing really happens, and then all of a sudden, boom. Yeah. And I said, yeah, that's right. And that's sort of what we tried to recreate. I think more than anything, we wanted to be as faithful to the actual fight as we could, or Philippe wanted to be as faithful to the actual fight as we could. I'm not a boxer, but I train boxing. And Pooch Hall, who is a boxer, who's a Golden Gloves champ, who's on my show in Ray Donovan, he plays my brother Daryl.
Yeah. A lot of Ray Donovan fans out there.
we literally had a like a month to put this movie together, and I was like, well, Pooch should play Ali.
And less to shoot it.
That's right. Pooch should play Ali, and because we know each other really well, and we can work on the choreography together, and we can have contact, because it just, that ridiculous, that hair, and when you sweat and you get hit in the head and the sweat pops off your head, all of that, especially when you're playing someone like Chuck, whose style, both as a man and as a fighter, was to get hit really hard. Yeah. And move through it, always move through it, always move forward. His whole thing was always move forward.
What was interesting staging the fight is that we built the architecture so it would still be part of Chuck's subjectivity. It's still him telling the story. So the segments that we see in the film is kind of the segments that he would talk about in hindsight, and that was fun for me to put to shoot it in Chuck's subjective point of view.
How did this become called Chuck? And when it premiered at the Venice Film Festival, it was called The Bleeder, I believe, right? Was that the original title?
Yeah, it was, and I admit I think I prefer The Bleeder, but
it's a cool title.
I think,
especially seeing the movie.
There was another film. Yeah, there was another movie that came out last November called Bleed for This that also dealt with boxing. There was the fact that it sounded for some people like an horror film. Yeah. And then there was this argument that went around that it wouldn't attract women, The Bleeder.
Women wouldn't like the word bleeder.
Yeah. I'm not sure that
Oddly enough, women wouldn't like the word bleeder.
So there you have it. This is a distribution thing, mainly. Yeah.
Chuck, he's still around. He's about 77, right? And his life's going really well. How involved was he during the making of this film? Did you?
Well, he auditioned me in his own way. He brought me to a steakhouse in Manhattan. He sat down, he put the script on the table, and he said, "What do you intend to do with that film?" And I said, "Well, Chuck, honestly, I don't think it's a boxing film." And then he started to shift on his chair. And then I turned to his wife, Linda, and I said, "It's really a love story." And she looked at me like that, and her eyes started to water. And I knew I had her, and she would take care of him.
That's all it took, huh?
but Chuck was there. I think he gave us some notes. You spent some time with him, and also I think meeting him for me was important because of we're dealing with a character here. We're not dealing with action. We're not dealing with. So I wanted to be close to him as possible. There was some details of his life that I loved that it was not in the strip. The fact that he used to write poems to his wife. So, spending time with him, I got to know that, and I used some of that in the film.
And the casting is great, right down to every role. The guy, the wonderful actor that plays Sylvester Stallone. Really,
Morgan Spector.
Yeah, really nails him. And of course, Naomi Watts, you're back on screen with her. Of course, you live with her, but she's terrific here. And I thought Elizabeth Moss too as the first.
Michael Rappaport. I love
yes,
Michael Rappaport.
Fantastic.
In the film.
It's the brother. Yeah. Okay. Any downsides to playing a character?
Let's switch the questions.
Okay. I do whatever he says. Yeah, no, absolutely downsides to playing people who are alive, especially if they're prize fighters. They watch you and they sort of look bemused. That's one of the downsides. For some reason Chuck was very, very generous with me, so I'm very grateful to him. I've always hated biopics, but I'm also eager for parts, and I liked after playing Ray Donovan for 3 years, there was something ebullient about Chuck. There was a kind of I don't know, it was a lightness to him as a character that I thought was going to be interesting. And when Philippe and I first started to talk about it, Philippe was like, there's a lightness in this guy, right? And I was like, okay, cool, that's going to be good. It's such a heavy character. But Chuck he had so much fun. He came to the scene we shot the bear fight, and he coached me how to fight the bear.
Like, Liev, when you get in there with the bear, just make sure you spin him, spin him so he can't get you.
And I was like, Chuck, you know that I'm not actually going to fight the bear. Right?
Wait a minute, you're not fighting the bear?
He drove all the way from Bayonne with 4 friends to see Ray Donovan fight the bear.
Hey, come on, we're going to go see Ray Donovan fight a bear. See how he does.
You weren't even allowed in the building when the bear was there.
The insurance company. I was like, can I get in the room with the bear? And you can't even be in the building with the bear.
Really? But they let you take all those hits to the.
They didn't know about that.
No, they didn't know. We didn't tell them.
There was another part of your question. Yeah, it was about
the lawsuit. I mean, it was not part of the script. For me, it was another segment of his life that came almost 15 years after, so it didn't interest me. Anyway, they did settle out of court, and the amount was never disclosed. But every time there's a lawsuit in a film, it sucks all the air out. I mean, it becomes about that, and for sure, for me, I didn't want to bring the story up to that. It made no sense for me, and also we wanted Sly to be okay with us doing that film, so there was some stuff that were out of bounds. For me, there was a moral contract because we're dealing with a real person, and I used to do documentaries, and I really struggled with that when I was a documentary filmmaker, because you want to create a dramatic arc in your film, but you're dealing with real people who have their own sensibility, and they're going to see themselves up there, and the documentary characters can call you at home, so I switched to fiction so they don't call me, but in this case he does call me.
Okay, Stallone's involvement in this film and his relationship with the real Chuck.
Well, he could have shut us down at any point. It was actually a friend of his who financed the film. Yeah. Well,
it depends on the week.
Yeah. Back and forth. But he was very generous with me, when I started to work on the last draft of the script, talking to him about his relationship to Chuck, and mostly talking to him about his inspiration for Rocky. That's what he wanted to talk about the most. And that was interesting to me, because I remember seeing that movie and being really impressed.
I thought that the reconstruction, the way you approach the 70s, was very beautiful, and I guess that it might have been a challenge as well. And I would like you to talk about how did you approach to make a period movie, meaning about the 70s.
Before you do that, I would just want to say that we had, I think, about a 28-day schedule, and if you count the days that I spent in the makeup chair, it actually, Philippe counted, because Philippe does that sort of thing, and it turned out he shot this film in 20 days, and when we wrapped this film, we had one exterior shot, which was me walking from a car to a bar. He assembled the majority of this movie, stitched it together with archival footage, and when we finished the film, I felt so happy about the work we had done together and the work that the actors done, but I thought we didn't have a film, and so it's really a remarkable piece of construction.
Yeah.
And really superb humanist filmmaker. So now you can explain how you did that.
Yeah, because there is a lot of archival footage that weaves in and out seamlessly here.
It was part of my pitch when I first called them. I wanted to use archive footage, not as much as we did, because we didn't end up dealing with the 70s is like outside nowadays in New York. It's almost impossible. But I wanted to avoid the pitfall of the pleasure of dealing with the 70s, because the 60s and 70s are kind of groovy and cool, and you can fall into the trap of, with the costumes and the music and the aesthetic, to try to be just a bit too flashy. So there was a line that I made sure we never crossed. For instance, the clothes that Vicky, our costume designer, prepared, I think she did an amazing job, because not only it's vintage 70, but it also talks about the person, and not only the person, but the mood he's in. And sometimes I would put the same coat on Chuck, and he would look super cool. And then depending on the staging and the situation, like in the school, when he goes to see the school teacher and his wife, all of a sudden he feels out of place in this coat. This coat looks ridiculous on him. So I tried to use the artistic element that the 70s brought us, to say something about the character. Same thing with the music. And the music, there were some beautiful hits from the 70s, but I tried to use the hits, just the B list, not the A list, and which served the film better when the New Jersey environment, like in the discotheque, like we recognize the song. It was not super hit. The only super hit, I think, That's the Way I Like It. But the other songs are songs I used to listen when I was like 8 or 9 on the radio back home. So yeah, it just makes sure not to cross a line to just impress people with the 70s.
You had that great Thelma Houston song, "Don't Leave Me This Way," in this too, which
this is a beautiful song, and it fit the part there.
Yeah. Most difficult scene, challenging scene for both of you?
I think for me, as an assistant to the mob of writers, and as an actor, the scene with Naomi in the bar at the end was very difficult, because structurally we were leaning too hard on that scene to turn us in the film. And it was difficult, and I remember being in the bar thinking, wow, we need some kind of emotional fireworks here to turn the corner, because we don't have enough Chuck and Linda. Mm-hmm. Oh, I shouldn't say things like that in front of an audience. Shit. I had a beer before I came in here. So but that was the truth. And for both of us, Philippe was so generous to me as someone who was trying to help with the writing. But we both knew that we had a really difficult turn to make there, and it made the scene. When you have too much expectation on a scene, it's bad for the actor, and it's bad for everybody. It's because you're not letting yourself. Most of the time we were playing. Most of the time we were kind of riffing. This scene, we felt there was an intention to turn a structural corner, and that was very hard.
And Philippe, for you, other than having to make this in 3 weeks?
Yeah, no. For me, it's that not shooting the scene that was frustrating. I was sitting on the Apple box like a quarter of a day waiting for Liev to be ready. Well, he was ready, but his nose to be ready, his fake nose. But I would agree with Liev. I could say the boxing was very stressful on me, because I had so little time to shoot it, and we were in Bulgaria to shoot it, and for all kinds of logistical reason. But at the end of the day, I think the most difficult scenes are always the most intimate scenes, because you can't use artificial, and you can't ways to go around it. You can't use fireworks. You have two characters, you have two actors, you have a camera, and I use a style that's pretty close, so you can't lie. So that, I agree with Liev, probably the most difficult one.
And in those 3 weeks that you had to shoot this, you had to move between Bulgaria and New York. You just dropped that little nugget there, too. That's not easy.
They wanted me to shoot the movie in Louisiana at the beginning. I went to scout there to find New Jersey and Louisiana. I did. True story. I came back and I said, there might be a version of this film in Louisiana, but I'm not going to do it.
The movie is obviously about Chuck, but you had Ali there. Did you contemplate having anyone play Howard Cosell?
I cast a lot of people, and it just felt too caricatured, so we dropped it. We also shot with a make-believe Don King. And again, I kind of like that scene, though, but it was too caricatured at the end of the day. So, but my biggest fear was casting Sylvester Stallone. How do you do that? How do you pull that off? And when we met Morgan Spector, I said, wow, he is saving us. Because he was the most improbable character to cast in the history of cinema.
Was that movie Lockup actually shot in a prison where he was?
Yes.
That's incredible, too. I mean,
yes.
Okay, what kind of roles do you want to do?
I honestly don't know. You know, I get asked that question, and I honestly don't know. It's impossible to anticipate. You know, it's like the best things that have ever happened to me have always been by accident. And almost every time they've been something that I said, that's a really bad idea. You know, every play that they came to me, I said, no, I'm not Italian. I can't play Ricky Roma. Like, that's a terrible idea. You know.
Let's thank them for coming out
Thank
here.
you very much.
Thanks, guys.
You have been watching the Landmark Theater's Q&A podcast. For further in-depth discussions with filmmakers, be sure to check out the other Q&As available on our channel from past films. And remember to subscribe to our YouTube channel to stay up to date with all our bonus content. Thanks for watching.